Because we're already broadcasting that.
Okay.
People online are getting this part.
Okay. He has your speaker on?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we did, I think we're getting and we have so we're doing good. We have 36.
And we think we got everybody, but if we didn't, will
There's more.
you ask and I just have them raise their hand and I'll deliver them.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Kelly.
All right. Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good. Good.
Raise your hands. How many of you participated in last night's event, the social event? What did you think about that? Round of applause for our networking. Great job. Jen and John had a really good time with our murder mystery. It was a great way to mingle and get to know each other, so enjoyed that very much. Thank you. So I'm Kelly Smith. I'm your current Oregon HFMA chapter president and very honored to be with you all today. We have a great turnout. I think we have about 117 people registered for this conference. So that's very excited and nice to be in the Portland area. A couple of updates for this morning. First of all, I hope you've all been able to get some breakfast. I wanted to thank Access One for contributing to us so we could have that breakfast this morning. Anybody from Access One here? Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. You also notice we have some chocolates on the table. It's a little early for chocolates, but we just realized that Oregon just had its 65th anniversary. So the Oregon chapter has been around since the 50s, 65 years ago. I can't do that math in public right now. But we're all old enough for Medicare, so we thought we should have some chocolates to celebrate. So we'll have that throughout the day. Yay. I wanted to acknowledge we have 5 brand new members to the Oregon chapter that are attending this conference. And if you are one of those 5 new members, can you stand up for us? Excellent. 2 of the 5. Wonderful. Thank you. We are a very open, warming group, so reach out to any one of us. All the chapter leaders have their black jackets on today, so reach out to us, introduce yourselves, and if you have any questions, we're all happy to answer. So thank you for being here as well. How about anybody else that's your first conference, Oregon HFMA conference that you're attending? Look at that number of hands over there. Excellent. Wow. Great. So we hope you enjoy. We have good content today, so happy to have you as well. So you might have noticed we have a podcast that was playing in the background this morning. You know, a little hard to hear, but we're pretty excited about this. This is something that's innovative for the Oregon chapter. We're trying it for the first time this year, and we're doing monthly podcasts. So our host, Jeff Johnson, has been interviewing me each month for an update on what our chapter is doing and what's happening at the national level as well. We're also trying to cover any key updates or issues in the healthcare finance industry so that we can stay on top of what is affecting all of us. So we would love to hear from you, what you think. Check us out. You can find us on our website. You can find us on any of our social media sites. Since it's the number 3 podcast, I'm told that it's now available on Apple.
It will be.
It will be shortly. So that's a big deal. And you can find it also if you go to Podbean. So I'm learning. I know that it's me, but I'm learning, so I'm figuring it out. But it's been a lot of fun. Also, we bring special guests in every month to talk with us, and would love to hear from you if there's any particular topics that you'd like us to cover. Let me know. I'm available all day and tomorrow. We have also something fun that we wanted to share with you. So Oregon loves to do fun things, and we have a video that had been put together by our chapter to advertise the Western Symposium that's coming up in February. And this is a Western Region conference. So a number of chapters get together to host an excellent event in Vegas. We have really good speakers, really good topics, and all of us were challenged to put together a video to promote this upcoming conference. So we wanted to share with you what Oregon did.
Just a second. I'm not sure what happened to our screen. Just 1 second. Sorry, guys.
There it is. Good job.
Do the intro, so we're going to start all over.
That's so sweet.
Paris Hotel and Convention Center, January 12th to 15th.
HFMA conference throughout all history.
Oregon road, take us home to the place we belong. Western Region, Symposium, take us home, Oregon road.
13 states come together.
Great education and warm winter weather.
Helping networking and sessions and
Bigger discount for providers, so good you'll want to die. Oregon home, take home to the place we belong. Western Region, Symposium, take us home, Oregon road. Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? Cotton Eye Joe, I've been there a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? It has been Cotton Eye Joe, I've been there a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
That was so much fun. So we did that at our last conference in Bend. Am I on? Yes. We did it at the last conference in Bend. Who all participated in that? Show of hands. Oh, we had great presentations though. Thank you. Such a blast. And last couple of quick housekeeping items. So I've been told that our Wi-Fi needs to be restricted as much as possible so that we don't interfere with the presenters or for online as well. So if possible, please monitor your use of Wi-Fi and only limit it to the time that you absolutely need to use it. Also, if you need to use the restrooms, you just head right out these doors to the left and they're up the little stairs. There's a short little staircase on your left and that's where the restrooms are. I think that does it. And for our morning session, oh, good. Yes, of course. So we are live streaming our events today and offering remote users to attend our conference online. So for any of you who have questions during the sessions, please remember to wait for the microphone so that we can capture your questions so our online guests are able to listen to those questions and answers. And also, if you could not walk in front of the camera, we would appreciate that too, because they'll get to see you that way if we have any walking in front of the camera business going on. All right, 8:30 to 10, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce to you this morning Ed Norwood. We have a very exciting session, something we've never quite done before, and I'm really hopeful that you will all leave here with some new tools.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Please welcome Ed.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be with you this morning. As you can see, HFMA is a great place to network. I was a director for Southern California HFMA for years, and I remember the stories that we had of so many people who shared that by them being involved, not just coming to meetings, but also rolling their sleeves up, tapping on the shoulder of other individuals to actually get involved in some of the committees, how when they had gone through transition in their lives, where they had to leave or go up to a different part of the state, that the time frame of them being out of work was lessened just by being a part of a great group called HFMA. And so you've got a great group here as well. I can see that you enjoy having fun, love the animation there, love the how we're training young members, even as toddlers, to become HFMA members as well. I really, really love that. I want to thank Kelly, our incoming president-elect, Evan, Cecilia, the entire board for the privilege of being with you today. We are truly humbled and thrilled to be a part of your session during Case Manager and Patient Account Manager Week. For those of you in the room who represent that group of individuals, we just salute you for preserving patient access to care, for increasing authorization and revenue chapter, and really showing up every single day in an industry that's filled with giants. Oftentimes your work feels unappreciated. We appreciate you, we value you, and we thank you. I have a bit of bittersweet news. For 20-something years, every session I've gone to, I've actually stayed for the entire session. And this is the first session in 20 years that I actually have to leave after I speak. And I'm very disappointed with that right now. But my son is a football player at UCLA, and he's making possibly his debut against Stanford tonight. So I'm flying out to get there. And thank you. So it's a bit bittersweet. I'm not used to leaving. I really believe in being a part of the events, hearing some of the great speakers, and really supporting the event that you work hard to put together. A bit of housekeeping. If you're on LinkedIn, can you do me a favor and pull your smartphone out right now and follow me at Ed Norwood. Follow Ed Norwood on LinkedIn. We're engaged in a few fights with CMS on plans. Don't want to name any of the plans at all. I know we're live stream Humana. Plans that are actually denying peer-to-peer reviews, are presenting unreasonable timeframes for peer-to-peer reviews, and also challenging plans that authorize care and then later attempt to deny it for medical necessity when they were contacted and they failed to respond timely. We'll talk about that today. And I'll be providing updates to that fight. So if you follow me, Ed Norwood, on LinkedIn, you'll have the ability to get updates. The things that we're doing in Oregon with CMS, we'll present them right there on our feed. The human voice, write that down, the human voice. It's one of the most powerful instruments that we have. It inspires, it builds, it fights for truth and justice. But it also tears down, it demoralizes, it intimidates and silences even the best of men and women. I was on site with the hospital about a month ago for a week of consulting engagement and training with their front and mid-cycle. And I was visiting a manager and went into a restroom to use the bathroom and saw all these colorful Post-it notes on the mirror. Some of them read this: create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life because you are what you believe. Another one said this: remember, you are incredible, you're smart, you're kind, you matter, you have value. And I was so inspired, I stayed in the bathroom and read all of them as I was going through them. The manager proceeded to tell me that the employee who had put them there all over the office had lost her daughter, teenage daughter, to suicide a couple of years before. She was a 4.0 student. She was beautiful. She had a boyfriend. She's a cheerleader. And because she wouldn't sleep around, the kids made fun of her. They laughed at her. They mocked and ridiculed her for her values because she wasn't doing what everyone else was doing. She was different. As a result, she became very lonely, very isolated, very, very depressed. One day, a friend invited her over for a sleepover. And the mom questioned, why are you going over that friend's house? Isn't she one of the girls that laughed at you, mocked you, ridiculed you? She said, yeah, Mom, but they're over that right now. The mom followed her intuition and called the mother of the young girl she was going to visit. And that mother questioned her daughter and found out later that the daughter had gotten friends together and they were going to invite guys over to come and rape the girl. Eventually, the boyfriend broke up with her, and this 16-year-old girl took her life. It was a reminder to me that life is cruel. People will try to silence your voice, your purpose, your gift, your distinction, your brightness that shines in the world. But I love this mom. She refused to let people's opinion of her daughter win. She refused to allow her greatest loss to define the rest of her life. And she had a mission every single day to ensure that she used her voice to remind people. Here's some other things she wrote. Life is tough, darling, but so are you. You are stronger than you believe. I believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. Be somebody who makes everybody feel like a somebody. Practice like you've never won. Perform like you've never lost. Despite suffering this great casualty, here she is, writing and inspiring the next generation. Here she is, a relentless voice and advocate in a world that sometimes is cruel, that is silent, that is despondent to the purpose that you have within yourself. We need healthcare advocates like that, like you. Write that word down, advocate, advocate. An advocate is one who defends the rights and causes of another. Because when truth's pillars are destroyed and law and order collapse, justice disappears. This hope that this woman demonstrated must never be shaken. You are the hope for your patients and your providers. You are the hope for justice in a broken healthcare delivery system. You are the hope for hospital representation from the single crushing blow of denials of treatment and payment. And hope is for things you don't have. If you already have something, you don't need hope for it. But if we look forward to something that we don't have, we learn to wait and appeal and challenge payers patiently, confidently, and expectantly, because we recognize we have a duty to advocate for medically appropriate health care for citizens in our state. I want you to write that term down. I advocate for medically appropriate health care for citizens in the state of Oregon. I advocate for medically appropriate health care for citizens in the state of Oregon. I advocate for medically appropriate health care for citizens in this great state. Now you wrote it down. Repeat that with me. Just say it with me. I advocate for medically appropriate health care for citizens in the state of Oregon. We exist to defeat giants. Who are the giants we face? There are many. There could be a diagnosis, a prognosis. In the hospital setting, and what we do, it's the problem payers that hold your authorization and dollars hostage and send you those ransom notes called EOBs saying, I'll pay you if you give me 1,000 unmarked medical records on the corner at 5 p.m. tomorrow. It's those individuals. They represent your Goliath. Giants exist to make you feel small, to intimidate you, to make you feel powerless, as if there's nothing you can do about what they're saying. They try to make you draw conclusions from bad news or denials, to change your culture, to warp your thinking, to really get your people around the office to begin to change the atmosphere of the office by saying things like, well, your manner always does that. They never allow peer-to-peer reviews. UHC always downgrades DRGs. We've never won. No one's ever succeeded against them. They never read our letters. They just won't listen. And you write the best letter in the history of healthcare, right? You write it's 5 or 6 pages. It has exhibits. You've pointed out everything wrong, and the payer has the audacity to respond to your masterpiece. When you printed this masterpiece, angels begin to sing, light shone on the letter, and payers have the audacity to respond to that letter with just 1 page. Sometimes on that 1 page, just 1 sentence. Denial upheld. But today is the day we slay that giant. I want to show you today how to advocate for medically appropriate health care pursuant to a case called Wickline versus State. Will you write that down? Wickline versus State. If you study and look up that law, it will change your career. In the case of Wickline versus State, Lois Wickline was cleared for an abdominal aorta surgery. Her treating doctor wanted to observe her condition for 8 days. Medi-Cal, which is California's Medicaid, have to be trendy. Medi-Cal would only grant a 4-day authorization. The doctor released her after 4 days. She suffered an infection in her leg, and in 1977, they amputated that leg or she would have died. Well, she sued everyone. She sued the entire state of California, Medi-Cal. She sued all of the providers and doctors. Who do you think she won against? Talk to me. Who do you think she won against? Yes. Medi-Cal or Medicaid got off. In the decisions, the court decided that all third-party payers could be held legally accountable for cost containment mechanisms that result in negligent utilization reviews or denials of care, that Medi-Cal was not responsible for the discharge decision. What should that doctor have done? What should they have done in that scenario? They should have kept the patient for the 8 days and given the 4 days that were denied to a group of people like us who would walk through brick walls for patients. So we have a responsibility to advocate for medically appropriate health care, not out of feeling or because we feel like it or because Ed said we should do it, but out of a risk management function to ensure that what happened to Lois in 1977 never happens on your watch. We had a chance to fight for a patient like this recently. We were the hope for them It was a scenario where this is what she wrote to us. The patient had a disease called AFM. It was a disease that mimicked polio. And the baby, the 14-month-old baby, was a paraplegic within 24 or 48 hours. And the mom wrote that on 10/5, a trach was inserted because the baby couldn't breathe on his own. They then consulted a doctor who was a rare neuroimmune disorder specialist who referred the baby to a Baltimore clinic called Kennedy Krieger Institute. Notice it was denied as not medically necessary. Don't worry about her misspelling. You know what she's trying to say. The doctor said it did not what? Meet MCG guidelines. How many of you, by show of hands, you've received the denial that was denied per MCG or interqual, something like that? You've received that denial. All right. So when we get that denial, normally, what do? When we get that denial, how do we challenge it normally? Talk to me. Sorry, we're very interactive in this class if they didn't tell you. Just talk to me. What do we do when we're getting those denials based on Milliman and interqual? Talk to me. Some of you've gotten them, you've worked them before. What are we doing? Sorry? Involve care management. For what purpose? Good, great. For a clinical review. We want to now challenge that denial for medical necessity. Notice a few things, and on LinkedIn, I'm going to list the new disclaimers for interqual, Milliman, and a few other guidelines that plans use that show how they might be using them inappropriately. Notice the interqual disclosure, and it has been updated, and I'm going to give you that, but in context, here's what it says. The clinical content reflects clinical interpretations and analysis and cannot alone either resolve medical ambiguities of particular situations or provide the sole basis for definitive decisions. The clinical content is intended solely for use as screening guidelines with respect to the medical appropriateness of healthcare services, and not for what? Clinical or payment determinations concerning the type or level of care provided or proposed to be provided to a patient. Look at the Milliman guideline. It says qualified healthcare professionals may use our guidelines as a tool to support medical necessity decisions, but should not use them as the sole basis for denying treatment or payment. Our guidelines must be applied to individual patients on a case-by-case basis and always in the context of a qualified healthcare professional's clinical judgment. A qualified healthcare professional. Here's what that means. If we're going to challenge medical necessity through care coordination or through a treating doctor or peer reviewer, are we also challenging competency? Just for a moment, in your envelope, I've given you just something that helps us record your public policy law hours. And we actually administer professional development units. If you need continuing education requirements, that first form tells me that you are here, and it gives me the ability to record your hours and give you a PDU certificate if needed. On the back of that, you're going to find just a form for the next session that we'll do in the Crystal Ballroom. But right behind that, you'll find a cheat sheet. In that cheat sheet, why don't you write competency requirements. Competency requirements under stall tactic. Competency requirements. For instance, under 42 CFR 422.590 G, 42 CFR 422.590 G. That is the Medicare Advantage law that states that a doctor that approves or denies or modifies services must be competent or skilled in that area of medicine to make that decision. I'll give you one for ERISA. 29, this is an ERISA statute for competency, 29 CFR 2560. 29 CFR 2560.503-1 H3 talks about competency. We'll read that in just a minute here. After the doctor had denied this, we filed a complaint with the Arizona Medical Board. Here's why. We wrote this: we dispute Dr. Tolson's decision to deny authorization for inpatient rehab services based on lack of authorization because two of Cooper's treating doctors with expertise in this field have documented the medical necessity of this requested service, and Tolson does not have the clinical expertise to make an appropriate medical decision in this matter as shown and described below. Now, we also then begin to quote a few things here in our argument on page 5. Dr. Tolson is not qualified to determine the medical necessity of rare neurological autoimmune disorders. Oh, I'm sorry. So there were two rare neuropediatricians that had prescribed the clinic in Baltimore for Cooper to go to. It was the only clinic that actually treated this rare condition, but an anesthesiologist denied it. How would we find that information out? Because attorneys all the time will check out the other attorney, by the way. They'll always go to the state bar and check out who they're fighting against. But watch this, in healthcare, when we're challenging medical necessity, it's rare that providers will check out the reviewer. We'll check out to see if they were qualified, if they were competent. Please write this down. For every medical necessity denial, you must bookmark the Oregon State Medical Board. You must get their name, you must search them, you must determine if they were competent, if they had the clinical expertise in the field of medicine that's at issue to make that decision. That should be a favorite in on all the computers for your staff members who are challenging denials just like that. So we noted here, in Dr. Tolson's denial, he states request is denied for the following reasons. There's no referral. Then he talks about request did not meet criteria per MCG guidelines. We then quoted that law I gave you earlier, 20 CFR 2560.503-1H. You're seeing 2 there, it should be 2 and 3. And in that law, it states that if there's a decision based on medical judgment, that the appropriate name employer fiduciary shall consult with a healthcare professional who has appropriate training and experience in the field of medicine involved in the medical judgment. We then quoted that disclaimer from Milliman that they cannot simply quote the disclaimer without clinical reasons that demonstrate that an independent professional did a review in conjunction with those guidelines. We quoted that. We noted how the letter based on MCG guidelines alone did not demonstrate that a competent physician had reviewed it, number one. Further, it did not demonstrate that they had considered the patient's condition, their clinical condition. We sent this out on February 19th to the Arizona Medical Board and to Aetna. On February 20th, the next day, the mom wrote this: Cooper has been approved for 6 weeks of rehab. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. 24 hours. Just by challenging competency or using administrative laws in the clinical process. She wrote this later: Cooper has been in intensive rehab for 10 weeks now and has made huge functional gains thanks to the therapy and medical care he's receiving. He is off the ventilator and well on his way to getting his trach reversed. He started eating by mouth and making sounds again. I had not heard my baby cry in 6 months. What a moment it was to finally hear him again. She followed up with this email to us. Cooper is making so much progress. It's truly incredible. I watched him take his first steps a few days ago, something I wasn't sure I would ever see. I can't even explain how incredible this place is and what they do for children with spinal cord injuries. Thank you again for getting us here. These are the faces of the people that you fight for every single day. Every denial has a human story tied to it. Our organization provides regulatory training, consulting, and representation to restrict third-party payers from making improper denials and medically inappropriate decisions, because we recognize that every case that we work represents more than just a policy number or patient account number or a dollar amount. It represents a human story that we can impact by what we do. And so today I want to give you 4 ways to advocate to advocate for medically appropriate healthcare. How to champion this process to advocate for medically appropriate care for patients in your state. Number 1, write this down. Can I do this? We must answer this fundamental question of if we have what it takes to fight the giants in the industry. Because the purpose of the law is to bring us to a place of recovery, but it's also to help us discover rules of just conduct, what the payer can do, what the payer cannot do. Real quickly, give you a foundation, go over a few organ laws and statutes listed here. Emergency services. In your cheat sheet, why don't you write emergency services? Emergency services. And this is a Oregon Revised Statute 743A.012. 2. Just write that down. ORS 743A.012.2. Notice, plans must provide coverage without prior authorization for ER services. That includes ER to ER transfers, where I'll give you this breakdown. What you'll find nationwide is emergency services have 6 components. I want you to write them down. Number 1, medical screening, examination, and evaluation to determine if there is a medical emergency. Medical screening, examination, and evaluation to determine if there is a medical emergency. And if that emergency does exist, the next 3 components are the care, the treatment, and the surgery to relieve or eliminate that emergency condition. So oftentimes in an ER to ER transfer scenario, you can provide medical screening, examination, and evaluation, but you don't have the facilities or the personnel to provide the care, the treatment, and the surgery to relieve or eliminate it. So even in an ER to ER transfer where you couldn't provide all 6 components of care, or the previous hospital couldn't, and the patient has been transferred to you, plans can't deny that transfer for lack of authorization pursuant to this section of law. Let's continue. Post-stabilization. I've emailed your commissioner at the Division of Financial Regulation to see if there's a stronger post-stab law for your commercial plans, but for Medicaid managed care, here are the laws regarding post-stabilization. A patient that's come through the ER, you must admit them, they cannot be discharged safely, and you're calling for an authorization. It states that a PCO is financially responsible for post-stabilization services obtained by division members within or outside the network under the following circumstances. If they authorize post-stabilization services, if the services have not been authorized, but administered to maintain the member's stabilized condition within 1 hour of the request. Notice post-stabilization, here's another criteria, have not been authorized, but administered to maintain, improve, or resolve the member's stabilized condition if the authorized rep doesn't respond to a request for what? Request for what? Authorization. Now, watch this. But when we're calling, we're not getting authorizations. Sorry, let me back up. I apologize. I was a little presumptuous. I've traveled nationwide, and what I've noticed is that when providers are calling to obtain an authorization, plans in those states are giving them a tracking and a reference number, not an authorization. Let's back up. I don't want to presume anything here. Do they do that here? Yes? All right. Why do you think they give you a tracking and reference number and not an authorization? Why do you think they do that? Sorry? Oh, I love that. You go. Give you a high five. You go. Absolutely. Because watch this. Write this down. An authorization creates a contract. And they understand that if they give you an authorization, they have engaged in an implied in fact contract, and they're trying to keep the door open to conduct a retrospective medical necessity review. So what's the purpose of a tracking and reference number? Write this down. The tracking and reference number, although not an authorization, the tracking or reference number constitutes that contact was made. You knew the patient was here, and you had 60 minutes to give us an authorization. So notice, they're financially responsible if they don't respond. Medicaid managed care plans have 1 hour to respond to a request for authorization. If they don't respond within 1 hour, if they cannot be contacted after hours, holidays, etc., if they don't reach an agreement with the treating doctor concerning the person's care, then they're responsible up until discharge. So I want you to just see and notice this. This is under OR 410-141-3240. Let me just go back. Post-stabilization services. Please write that in your cheat sheet. Post-stabilization services. OAR 410-141-0140 6B. This is our 1 hour post-stabilization rule for Medicaid managed care. And then 410-141-3240, these are notice requirements of how the medical necessity denial must look, what they must give you, including clear and a thorough explanation of specific reasons for the denial, including reference to specific statutes and administrative rules to the highest level of specificity for each reason and specific circumstance identified in the notice. They've also mentioned a few things here listing the item requiring prior authorization. They've talked about just in those notice requirements, any services not meeting medical necessity, the service, if it specifically didn't cover a service, didn't meet requirements, they must give you a list of that. If the service or item was received in an emergency setting, doesn't qualify as an emergency service, these are all the things they must include in their notice requirements. Medicare Advantage, real quickly. Medicare Advantage. We've noticed that if you're non-contracted, there's an independent review process with Medicare through Maximus, and that's under 42 CFR 422.590B. And basically it states that if for some reason the plans decide to uphold the denial, they must prepare the case file and submit that to Maximus within 60 days of the date they receive your request. And of course, that includes them requesting from you a waiver of liability. We were finding that through audits CMS was determining payers were not forwarding cases to Maximus in a timely manner. And so here's an example of United Healthcare, your favorite payer, I'm sure, using Equiclaim in a DRG downgrade, where they give 30 days and they give you a chance to see what their classification for this case is, to downgrade the DRG. And then they simply say, check the box that you agree with. If you agree with the DRG downgrade or if you disagree. In this scenario, you'll find that our Arkansas provider disagreed with the downgraded DRG. They then responded after that and stated, based on the above supporting documentation and coding guidelines, our recommendation remains to resequence this. We appreciate your timely response and feedback in our collaborated efforts. We then filed a complaint with CMS. Here's a CMS Complaint Form they've given to us for our provider members. And CMS will take complaints for disputed amounts where you feel there's been a DRG downgraded improperly. We filed this complaint. In the summary of complaint, we listed some of our arguments listed there. And here's just a response from UHC when we did it. They wrote, "Hi, Brian, in response to your complaint number, Optum responded to me on 8/24/18, and attached you will find a list of claims with new appeal numbers. 2 of the claims already appear to have been paid." So notice how just in the complaint process, we were able to restart the appeal process with United Healthcare. Under, I believe it is 42 CFR 422.166, it talks about how your complaints can affect the star rating of Medicare Advantage plans. 42 CFR 422.166. And so they were very interested because of the complaint to try to redress the issue, and they had a CTM coordinator. Let me explain a few of those acronyms. When you file with a CMS office against a Medicare Advantage plan, in addition to pursuing your appeal rights, Medicare is separated by regional offices. If you search CMS Regional Map, you'll find your region in this area for how to file complaints with CMS. Some of you might even, well, a person here may even know. Do you know what your region is at all for CMS? 10. So region 10, he mentioned, is your region here. Not your HFMA region, your CMS region. I want to make sure we're clear with that, okay? Don't cross them. But if you look up CMS region map, you'll find your region. Now, when you submit a complaint to a regional office, they submit that. There's an administrator over each regional office. So you want to type in whatever the region office is, region office 6 administrator. There's an administrator. In the regional offices, there are something called AMs, account managers. Each plan has an account manager. So there's a regional office, there's an administrator, there is a what? Account manager, an AM. When you submit your complaint to the region office, they locate the account manager, and that account manager makes contact with the CMS or the Medicare Advantage plan to review their decision. In this scenario, plans also have created a CTM coordinator, because every complaint you lodge has to be entered in something called the CTM. Write that down. The complaint tracking module. Every complaint. So I submit my complaint to the regional office, the RO. There's an administrator over the RO. There's also an AM or an account manager who's responsible to enter my complaint in the CTM, the complaint tracking module. Here's the complaint tracking module coordinator after we filed a complaint who reopened the denials and began to pay them. Later, the administrator of San Francisco wrote this to us. I'll show you real quickly. Specifically, CMS staff reviewed the 4 complaint tracking module you brought to attention. They involved 8 Medicare beneficiaries, 10 Baxter claims. Of the 10 claims, 1 was partially recouped beneficiary. For the beneficiary, UHC provided the appropriate provider dispute language to Baxter and has been in communication with the provider about that claim, which remains partially recouped. UHC fully recouped the remaining 9 claims and provided the required Medicare appeals language in each of the notices. Baxter appealed all 9 full recoupments. In 2 cases, Baxter filed the appeals late. In 1 case, Baxter failed to submit the required waiver of liability. UHC dismissed all 3 of those appeals. And the payments remain fully recouped. For the remaining 6 full recoupments, UHC processed the appeal, reversed the recoupment, and paid the claims in full. So what they had recouped through the downgraded DRG, they reversed it and paid it 6 out of the 10 just by challenging it with CMS. Here's a great question. Write it down. How many complaints have we filed with CMS in the past 12 months? Don't answer it. Don't answer it. But I want you, it's a rhetorical question. I want you to think about it. Because we exist to discover rules of just conduct with payers. Here's another issue that we're seeing quite often. Plans are failing to pre-approve care within the statutorily required hour. We'll go over that as well. Even if the services are ordered by a plan provider. So we've had a plan recently issue authorization, scan, and then try to conduct a retrospective review and deny it for lack of medical necessity. Plans who are trying to act as if they're traditional Medicare when there is an authorization process under Medicare Advantage. So we escalated this to CMS, of course, and they sent something back to me very interesting. I want you to see it. Copy of the Medicare Managed Care Manual. At the very bottom, they typed this. This is their typing. They typed this from Seema Verma's office when I got this back. Ready? When a treating physician is contracted with the plan, CMS views him or her as the plan. Did you just hear what I said right now? Did you just really catch what I started kicking myself, Andrew, because about 10 years ago, I was representing ambulance providers in the ALJ, and they were doing dialysis repetitive transports. And the nephrologist was prescribing that the patient had to come to dialysis through ambulance. Kaiser was denying it, stating, we don't feel it's medically necessary. And I remember being in the hearing, and the judge said, if the nephrologist is good enough to administer the dialysis, they're good enough to determine how the patient needs to get to dialysis. And then he quoted this law when he stated, it's long-standing rule that CMS views a treating nephrologist or provider as the plan. And I won 80% of my cases that way. And I didn't even think to myself to use it for you, for hospitals. So I'm kicking myself when I actually get this. So we requested something called a FOIA, F-O-I-A, write that down, a Freedom of Information Act request. You can ask for anything from the government. One time CMS said, hey, we don't get involved if you're contracted. We said, okay, I'm gonna write a FOIA for that. Please provide the statutory authority and any CMS document that you rely upon not to review a contracted provider's complaint that could have great consequence on a Medicare beneficiary, access to care. And we got a copy of their entire standard operating procedure of how they process complaints. And in that SOP, it states they must take complaints for any Medicare beneficiary provider. It doesn't matter. I can't give it to you because on the very bottom of it, it says this information cannot be disseminated without authorization, and there'll be full consequences to the extent of the law. Don't want to go to jail, can't give it to you, but I can tell you about it. It exists, and you can obtain it through something called a FOIA. We wrote a FOIA, and we obtained this information, but we also obtained parts of the Medicare Managed Care Manual under Section 160, beneficiary protections. of that manual. It states, there it is again, in fact, I'll read them both. An enrollee or provider acting on behalf of the enrollee always has the right to request a pre-service organization determination if there's a question as to whether the item or service will be covered. Then it says, CMS considers a contracted provider an agent of the plan. In other words, the decision to admit constitutes a favorable determination. We then notice in that same section, that same Medicare manual under 10.16, medical necessity. God, I hope you're writing these down. Under medical necessity, has a bunch of great things, but for sake of time, at the very bottom, it states this. If the plan approved the furnishing of a service through an advanced determination of coverage, it may not deny coverage later on the basis of a lack of medical necessity. What are you using to challenge your payers? We begin to use this in our challenges. Per CMS policy, contracted providers are considered agents of the plan. We begin to show documentation that supports that. And then, in addition to that, we find out who ordered the admission, who ordered the care. And we go to the payer website and we put their name in and we pop up their profile. Sometimes it's their face smiling. And we send this as an exhibit to show that's your provider. That's your affiliated or treating provider that ordered the treatment. Please be advised that for the purposes of the rules, CMS views the treating provider as the plan. Therefore, services cannot be denied. And we've begun to see great results just by using CMS rules and guidance against Medicare Advantage plans. So post-stabilization, write this down in your cheat sheet, MA post-stabilization. Here are the rules for MA post-stabilization. It's under 42. In fact, I'll give you the rules for MA emergency and post-stabilization. You can write down emergency first and put post-stabilization in the same box or a different box. It's completely up to you. But I'll first talk about MA emergency services under, write this down, 42 CFR 422.113B2. 422.113B2. Here's what it says. An MA organization is financially responsible for emergency and urgently needed services, regardless of whether there is what? Prior authorization for the services. Also, regardless of, notice, final diagnosis. So plans cannot do a retrospective analysis of the level of care eventually provided. Oftentimes, if a patient comes in and the final diagnosis is gastritis, they'll deny it. But that's because they are ignoring the chief complaint or the presenting symptom of the patient. Notice they're financially responsible regardless of final diagnosis. They must consider the presenting complaint or symptom. They must pay for what it took to rule out a heart attack, an emergency. The screening, the examination, the evaluation needed. They must take care at a minimum of that. That's under 422.113B2. Then notice B3 states that the physician treating the enrollee must decide when the enrollee may be considered stabilized for transfer or discharge, and that decision is what? Binding on the organization. All right, if I had some time, I might talk about it in the next class actually. I talk about observation versus inpatient. And we talk about how when a person comes through observation, the doctor is trying to determine if they should do one of two things. What is it? Admit or discharge. And the law states that that decision of if the patient can be discharged is binding on the organization. In If I had some time, I'd talk about how oftentimes there are individuals who are making decisions to change from inpatient observation after the patient's been discharged, which violates original Medicare law. Oftentimes, they're asking for us to change what the treating doctor ordered. That decision is binding on the, I see Evan standing, I'm not sure what that means. You scared me. Don't scare me like that. Okay, I thought you can't do that to me. I thought I had like 2 minutes left. You can't see, but I love a picture. Yeah, I love a picture. If you can just, yeah, I love that. I love that. Absolutely, send that to me. I'm with you, man. Just can't scare me like that. Okay. You know, you already had me in the Tower of Terror elevator here. Okay. You know, I had to make sure that I was gonna live because, you know, our people don't live in scary movies. I had to make sure I was gonna live. I was gonna get through that. Don't scare me, like, don't do that to me, man, at all. Okay, all right. It's a gorgeous hotel. You can always tell a great hotel by the what do you call it? By the products, the lotion, all that. Gilcrest, great stuff, great stuff, great stuff. So notice that decision is binding on the MA organization. For the plans that might say, well, we believe the patient was stable Monday, not Tuesday. Sorry, please provide the statutory authority that substitutes your judgment in the place of the treating doctor's judgment in violation of 422.113B3. And we're learning how not just to cite laws, but ask great questions. Great questions that you ask payors will create long, awkward stretches of silence. And that's when you know I got it. So we understand that the law talks about stabilization being binding. Then under 422.113C2, the MA plan is financially responsible for post-stab care obtained within or outside the network that are what? Pre-approved by that's that plan provider is the agent of the plan. The law itself states if the plan provider pre-approves it, the plan's financially responsible for it. If it's approved by their MA organization rep, they're responsible for it as well. That's under 422.113C. So 422.113B is emergency services. 422.113C is post-stabilization. That's listed here. Just as for those of you who are writing your cheat sheet out. Notice they're also financially responsible for post-stab care that they've not pre-approved by a plan provider or other MA rep, but were administered by you within 1 hour of the request to maintain the enrollee stabilized condition. So whatever you do within 1 hour of that authorization, they must pay for that. That's self-explanatory. They're also financially responsible for post-stab care that are not pre-approved by a plan provider or MA organization rep, but administered to maintain, improve, or resolve the enrollee's stabilized condition if the plan doesn't respond to a request for pre-approval, not a request for a tracking number, not a request for a reference number, but a request for pre-approval. A few things, just real quick question. When you are requesting an authorization through the ER, are you calling or faxing or doing both? Just talk to me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Calling, faxing, or both? Both? You're doing both of them. All right, I love that answer. If you're not doing what she said, because you didn't say anything, you could have said something, you decided not to, please make sure you're doing both. We've had several attorneys at agencies tell us, please make sure your providers are doing both, calling and faxing. If you've got the personnel and the workflow structure to do that, I'd like for you to do that if possible. On your faxes at the very top need to say request for authorization. Please write that down because many of you don't have that on your fax cover sheets. I know that. Please write that down. It must say in bold at the very top, not in the subject line, at the very top, request for authorization. Make it clear what you're requesting from the actual payers if you're faxing currently. Notice if they don't respond to a request for pre-approval within 1 hour, or if they cannot be contacted after hours, holidays, weekends. How would you prove they couldn't be contacted? You can go to their website and find their UR laws, or the UR hours rather, and you can print that page out and show, see, you were closed, you could not be contacted. If they cannot be contacted, they're also financially responsible. Notice, if there's no agreement reached between the plan and your doctor. We've had Humana recently begin to deny peer-to-peer reviews if you don't do them within 1 to 4 hours. Now, for any of you that deal with a treating doctor doing a peer-to-peer review, there's no guarantee you can get them within 1 to 4 hours. They're busy seeing patients, etc. So the law, and what they're doing is that if you don't do it within the 1 to 4 hours, you can't do the peer-to-peer review. So the law basically states that if they cannot reach an agreement, then you can continue to care for the patient until you reach them, or if they refuse to talk to you until one of the criteria in section C3 are met. So if you cannot do the peer-to-peer review, or they refuse to do it with you because you did not meet a time window slot, then this is my favorite section of the MA part dealing with post-stabilization, really of the entire MA section. It talks about, C3 talks about the end of the MA organization's financial responsibility. Here's what it says. The MA organization's financial responsibility for services they've not pre-approved ends when a planned physician with privileges at your hospital assumes responsibility for the patient's care. Number 2, a planned physician assumes responsibility through transfer. If they don't want to assume care, number 3, they can reconsider their decision to approve or deny the care. If they don't do either of the first 3, then their responsibility ends when the patient is what? So here's what's happening. We get a tracking and reference number, and one of 2 things. We get a tracking and reference number, and we do concurrent reviews. They deny it concurrently, right, with our peer-to-peer doctor, and then we fight the denial on the back end. I know, yeah, absolutely. I've seen it everywhere, where if we get that denial and the peer-to-peer can't overturn it, we bill it and wait for the denial and then fight it then. I want to change your thinking today. I want you to write this down. I want you to see if you can create a process to challenge it concurrently, to speed up your authorization process, or your authorization capture, and speed up your revenue capture. And why would we fight it concurrently? Because if the payer, see if you caught this, if the payer denies it concurrently, what is their obligation under the law? I'm so excited right now. Really excited. If they deny it concurrently, what must they do? So here's what they're doing. They'll deny it concurrently and they'll disappear. And they may even say bill with medical records, and we'll do it. But under this law, if they deny it concurrently, what must they do? Look at it. They must assume. Wait. So you mean if you deny it concurrently, you've got to come and get them? That's what the law says. Either by having their doctor with privileges at your hospital take over the care of the patient, or through transfer. So we've created fax cover sheets that say MAO, disagreement of care. Since we've entered a disagreement of care, since you have not reached an agreement concerning the enrollee's care, you have now responsibility to assume care for the patient, either at our hospital or through transfer. Should you fail to do so before the patient is discharged, please be advised that the entire stay is payable throughout the discharge date. So when they come and ask for medical records after the patient's already gone, we go back to Genesis. We go back to the beginning. How did the patient get here? Sorry, patient arrived on January 15 with severe crushing chest pains, could not be discharged safely, was admitted. We called you on that day. You failed to respond within 1 hour with a pre-approval on authorization. We then provided you with clinicals on this day, this day, this day, and this day. At no time did you disapprove care. We then noticed that 7 days later, you denied it concurrently, but failed to assume care for your patient through a doctor that had privileges here, through transfer. You failed to reconsider giving us an authorization. Therefore, under existing Medicare law, your MA plan is responsible up until discharge for the entire stay. Some of you are seeing patient names fly across your head right now. So we understand plans have a responsibility to preserve access to care for patients. We make a decision to fight for those patients by what we do every single day. Real quickly, here's what it says. They're responsible for post-aid care when they pre-approve them. Number 2, when you render services within 1 hour. When you, number 3, when they did not respond to your request after 1 hour, cannot be contacted, or don't reach an agreement about the enrollee's care. And their responsibility ends when a planned physician assumes responsibility for care at your facility through transfer, through an agreement, or it ends when the enrollee is discharged. Here's some questions for you. Has the plan issued a tracking number versus an authorization? In addition to that, did the plan receive fax clinicals to conduct concurrent reviews while the patient was still in-house? Did they strengthen the statutorily deemed authorization by obtaining clinicals every single day and still not responding timely to you? Did they fail to notify you of any disagreements prior to the commencement of care or during the continuation of care? Any failure to issue an authorization within 60 minutes deems the service as authorized. So we spent the first part of our day talking about, can I do this? And what I wanted to do in that segment was show you the laws that say you can fight giants in your industry. You can challenge improper denials. Next one is, can I process this? Because in addition to everything you've written down, you have to figure out how can you assimilate this into action when you go back to your organizations. How do you prevent denials? Write this down, just write this question down, and you can write it in a better way than I can probably say it. But do you have a process that looks at your tracking and reference numbers and converts them to authorizations before you bill? Because normally from the time the patient leaves to the time you bill is anywhere between 2 to 5 days. Do you have a process where someone can go and look at all those tracking and reference numbers to see if we made contact, to see if they failed to respond within 1 hour, to see if they're financially responsible for the entire stay, and convert it on the spot? Because the question we begin to ask is, what if we could prevent denials? And so we begin to create training where we would train hospitals, come on site and do a consultant engagement and shadow their front and mid cycle and put together findings and recommendations, put together tools, documentation and rebuttal guidelines. I'll show you that in just a minute. If they could not create this denial prevention unit, we begin to create it within our own office where our clinical teams with our hospitals will send us cases that have a tracking and reference number that have not been converted to an authorization just yet. How do you process what I've said today? Here's some of the time frames that you have to make appeals for some of the common federal jurisdictions. 60 days for Medicare Advantage under 422.582. The VA, you have 1 year to file something called a notice of disagreement. The appeals through the VA are called an NOD, a notice of disagreement. On every appeal to the VA, in the right-hand corner, you should write notice of disagreement. 6 months if it's ERISA. We begin to figure out, okay, we challenged our provider members, have you created law libraries, letter libraries? Oh, my favorite one is the third one, blurb libraries. We decided we would not start from a blank piece of paper ever again, as much as we could, right? We created a blurb library. We have a no claim on file blurb. We have a medical necessity blurb. We have a non-emergent blurb. We have a timely filing blurb where we can put that into an email, into a letter, or present it to us on the phone while talking to someone at any point. We've created policies and procedures for our provider members. There's that term I gave you before, documentation, rebuttal guidelines, fax cover sheets, registration forms with laws. Here's a registration form where we included the California law at the top of the registration form, so we could streamline what the responsibility of the payer was, starting in registration, or starting with insurance verification, training them how to actually do it. Here's some example of the findings of what we provide when we're on site to help providers with, creating flow charts of what they're doing. Then we create a recommended flow chart based on what we actually feel they should change to be consistent with the law. We create documentation rebuttal guidelines. We've decided that plans have way too much fun with disclaimers. So we've created some disclaimers. Here's a disclaimer when the MA plan only gives you a tracking and reference number and not an authorization. We then show them how to notate the file or the account, and then we tell them to read this disclaimer. Please note, Humana, that while you've issued a tracking and reference number for your patient, under existing Medicare law, plans are required within 60 minutes from initial contact to pre-approve post-state care or assume care of the beneficiary via transfer or at our hospital if privileged. This tracking number does not satisfy your requirements under the law, but constitutes that contact was made in the event we do not receive an authorization number from you within 1 hour of this request. Your financial responsibility for post-state care services you've not pre-approved ends when you assume care of the patient, reach an agreement, yada, yada, yada. We've given them a disclaimer of what they can say back to the payer when they're throwing out their disclaimers. We've created fax cover sheets that clearly state that we're requesting an authorization, that quote the law within the fax cover sheet as well, that states when we expect to hear back from them, that states how long we'll keep the patient waiting for transfer before we'll put them into a room and free up the ER for the general public. If the MAO is contracted with a treating doctor, we've created a fax cover sheet for the peer-to-peer to fight based on what we shared with you earlier. We've created a fax cover sheet notifying them we disagree. If you don't give us an authorization, you're responsible to come and get your patient. We've created policies and procedures with our provider members. We've also shown them how to manage denials. For instance, here's a question, write this down, don't answer it. Do you have the ability to flag your cases by denial and jurisdiction? And if you don't do it by denial and jurisdiction, can you flag it just by denial? In other words, if I wanted to see all Humana medical necessity denials, all UHC DRG downgrades, could you run a report and give me everything denied for that particular payer so that we can begin to do something called a mass appeal? We created our denial categories with the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is very important because it determines what law to use in this book or in our law libraries. It also determines the time frames we have to appeal. So it's important that you understand jurisdiction. We've created sample denial categories that we've loaded into our provider member system, so we can manage our denials really well. So instead of sending 10 denials, appeal letters, we send one appeal letter to one payer for that same denial to show an aggregate number of patients affected by that practice. Just an example of how we manage denials. So can I do this? Was the first one. Can I process this? Next, can I automate this? Can I automate this? We have created automation through appeal letter writing programs. We've also created a knowledge base that was initially launched in 2008 or so, and we relaunched this last year by popular demand. And we love it because what it does, we have it for about maybe 20 or 25 states or so, but the provider can go in under medical necessity or under post-stabilization. They can click here and it pops up the law that they can quote back to the payer while they're actually speaking to them, while they're doing a peer-to-peer review, while they're calling to get something reprocessed. It builds the repetition of what we've actually done. And so we're really super excited about this and the laws that we've actually put together, which includes Oregon as well. Then, of course, 2020, the year of vision, we're working on denial topics into our new program, Rev Assurance Online, where we can pick a jurisdiction and we can search a denial topic by that jurisdiction. We'll also have a script generator where we can pop up a script to them and tell the actual FTE what to say on the phone. It can generate an appeal. Also, it can list the regulatory agency you would file a complaint with. Here's the letter generator that could be created by it. Here are the topics that we're pulling into this particular program. We're super excited about this. In addition, it comes with a help desk where a provider member can actually write in, hey, I need a law for retroactive denials for Tennessee. You provide that to me. And we'll provide them with, through a ticketing system, that law. And then once a year, we provide training for them. We can show them how we've grown together as a group. Can we automate this? Lastly, can I beat this? All right. So I've given you in your folder a couple of forms. I want you to pull this out. This is how we'll end today. How we'll end today. Giving you a couple of folders. Please pull this blue infographic out. Not folders, give you a couple of flyers. I apologize. Please pull this blue infographic out. What are payers looking for in an appeal letter? We talked about, can I do this? Can I process this? Can I automate this? Now, can I beat this? Let me write a great appeal letter. Number one, you have to make sure you identify the denial reason really well. We've had payers that we filed complaints on tell the commissioner or the agency we filed with, hey, when the provider appealed this, they didn't actually challenge that reason. It's important that you figure out the right denial reason, what you're denying. Also, you've got to determine the jurisdiction really well for the reasons I shared with you before. And then our attorney has created a transitional statement of fact paragraph to ensure a clear explanation of what you're disputing, to make sure that your position is contained in the letter. And if the payer does not read your 5-page thesis, that they can determine what your dispute is just by this statement of fact. So let me give you a great example of one that we could use in the scenario I gave you before. So if the payer denies a claim for medical necessity, we talked earlier about how we will normally go and get care coordination involved. We will appeal it, right, for medical necessity. But based on what we've learned today, that won't be our first stop. Based on what we learned today, or maybe along with that first step, we're going to look to see if there is a deemed authorized fight, right? All right, so here's a sample statement of fact that we would use for something denied as not medically necessary, but the payer didn't respond within 1 hour. We'll write this. We dispute Humana's denial of this claim as not medically necessary because Humana was notified of the patient's admission. As you're looking at that, you can even write on date. It's important that it's facts driven. Because Humana was notified on January 15th of the patient's admission and failed to disapprove care prior to patient's discharge as shown and described below. You could even say Humana was notified on January 15th of the patient's admission and failed to approve or disapprove care within 1 hour prior to the patient discharge as required by 422.113. You can make that whatever you want. But the objective is, can they understand what your entire dispute is with that statement of fact? We'll practice that in just a minute. Then we want to attach exhibits to each fact. It's important that if you're stating something in a timeline, that you provide an exhibit for it as much as you can. And you can create a dollar threshold of when you'll have your staff members do this. But notice, if we're telling them we submitted a claim to you on a date, we're giving them the exhibit of that claim that was submitted. If they denied it for a certain reason, we're giving them a copy of that denial, so they'll see what they've actually done. HealthNet, we did for SoCal's HFMA chapter, we did a payer panel, and HealthNet sent their attorney, and she said in the very beginning, the opinions that I share today do not necessarily reflect the opinions of HealthNet. I was a little afraid when she said that, but then she went on to say, listen, you know, Ed files these complaints, and that's great that he represents you guys, but let me tell you how to resolve issues before you have to file a complaint. If we didn't pay something pursuant to a contract, don't just say you failed to pay it pursuant to a contract. Because we get X number of 10,000s of appeals daily, and our people will not get out of their seat and go find your contract to see if you were right. So attach a copy of that contract, circle the area, the pertinent area that we failed to do with every appeal. That will speed up your appeals. And so it's really important that you have the ability to add exhibits that document or substantiate your position. Also, locate administrative laws to support each argument. And then don't just cut and paste, apply the law. Here's an example of how you can apply it after you quote the law. Here, Humana was notified January 15th, failed to assume responsibility of the patient within 1 hour prior to discharge, deeming the services statutorily authorized. Lastly, land the plane. Tell them what you want. Don't write this great letter and not give them a deadline. It's important that your letters have deadlines. Please write that down. Why do we know that deadlines are powerful? Because every year on April 15th, there is a line around the corner from the 24-hour post office for people trying to meet a deadline. Make sure you've met deadlines, you've talked about them in your conclusion. Here's an example. Please release the federal funds intended for the Medicare beneficiary on or before this date to prevent any unnecessary regulatory complaint action. So I've given you 3 words that I want you to remember in this exercise. We dispute because as shown and described below. We dispute because as shown and described below. In fact, in the statement of fact samples I gave you, I bolded those. We dispute because as shown and described below. These are the components you must use in your transition statement of fact. So please pull this out. I've given you another infographic that looks like this. And I want you to begin to work on this real quickly for about 2 minutes with your table. And I want you to look at the list of facts. If you know how to answer number 3 based on the laws I've given you today, then write that in. Love to see you do that. And the team that you're going to work with is the team at your table. You can use the entire table. You could use just 2 or 3 people at the table. You know, if you're a hermit and you want to do it by yourself, you can do it by yourself. That's fine. I get those. I get it. Sometimes you just want to work on your own and make help. I get it. I'm with you. But I encourage you to work with each other to just go through this real quickly so I can show you how to do it with your staff. Give you about 60 seconds right now to take a look at the first part, and we'll have 60 seconds to then try to put some of this stuff together real quickly. I'll come right back to you in just a minute. You're looking at this right here, just so we'll have the ability to talk about how to put our appeal letter together. That table is your dream team. That's your dream team. You might need to establish a spokesperson for your dream team as well. So we're just reading the timeline. We're reading what happened in the case. If on bullet 3, you remember the law that you learned earlier, insert that law on bullet 3, if you remember it. We're just reading the timeline for the purpose of the next part of the infographic. We're just reading to understand the timeline. "30 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm gonna come right back to you. 30 seconds, I'll come right back to you. I just want you to understand what happened. "15 seconds, I'm coming right back to you. 15 seconds, I'll come right back to you. 15 seconds. "10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, watch this. All right, on number 3, bullet point number 3, did anyone remember the law that we used there? If number 3 simply says this: on 11/2/15, hospital faxed a face sheet to Careless Senior Plan notifying of the patient's admission and requesting authorization per what? Anyone remember that? Per what? What law was that? Oh, good. So you're trying to use your Oregon one. All right. But watch this. What type of plan is this? It's an MA plan. How do we know that? Because they're careless. No, I'm kidding. Because it says Careless Senior Plan. So we're using the MA section. 4.2 CFR. Beautiful. 4.2 CFR. Write this down under bullet point 3. 42 CFR 422.113C. That's the law that talks about requesting authorization. All right, so we understand what's happened in the actual case. And even though under the second and last bullet point, 2516, it was denied as not medically necessary, we're not fighting medical necessity. Why? Not just emergency, because they never responded within the statutorily required 1 hour of the request for pre-approval. So we're not fighting medical records, medical necessity. That's a moot point. We called you, you failed to respond within 1 hour. It's deemed authorized until discharge based on 422.113C. So it's important that you see that. Many of your staff members are fighting medical necessity when you've already proved they failed to respond to you within 1 hour. All right? So the denial is simply what you would write here. They're denying it for not medically necessary. It's an MA case. And then in the statement of fact, that's when you would write your statement of fact based on what you just read. We dispute Humana's denial of this claim because on list the date, contact was made to you, notifying you of an admission. And you want to have the ability to build this in a very similar way than I showed you on the first blue sheet. Now, I'm kind of rushing through it because my time has already gone, but I want to show you how to now take these facts and create a statement, a transitional statement of fact listed here. And it'll be a very powerful exercise for you if you'll work on that today and really take it back to your office and take your staff through it as well. On the bottom of your registration form, if you'd like a copy of 2 things I want to send you. Number 1, I want to send you the fax cover sheet example I sent you. that shows the MA law. So on the bottom of your PDU form that I gave you, just write send UR fax cover sheet. And then also, I'll send you a copy of this as a PDF, and you can do this exercise with your staff. But for the most part, you're taking this set of facts, you're creating your statement of fact here, and then I'm showing you how to apply the law in the letter as well. Please be advised that 422.113C states this. Further, 422.113X states. Then I'm showing you how to apply the law. I gave you an example of that on the blue infographic. And then, of course, how to conclude and end it as well. Again, my time is gone. If I had more time, I'd try to jump into it. But I want to encourage you to engage in that. I'll send you the fax cover sheet. I'm also going to send you a sample documentation and rebuttal guideline as well that I showed you earlier. I'm going to send you a copy of that. Please, on the very bottom of your registration form, put send UR form and sample documentation rebuttal guideline. And I'll send you an MA1. Give you an example of how we created that. And then, of course, if you'd like this to work out with your staff, I can send you that as well. Listen, just a few things as you go today. When you go back, you're going to have a lot of weapons. And you'll be unrecognizable to people in your office. They'll look at you funny. Some of the things you'll bring to them, they will question you. They won't see what's stirring in your heart. They won't have your conviction. They won't be fluent in your language. They'll remind you of the odds, why you won't succeed, why the appeal will fail. But refuse to allow this industry of giants to change your perspectives that we've shaped and formed today. Because when people can't see the new giant killer that we've created today in you, when they reject what doesn't make sense to them, know that you're preparing to do something amazing, something people have never heard, seen, or imagined. And patience need the best of you, the best of the giant killer in you when you get back to your offices. I want to thank you for this time that I've shared with you. I appreciate your hospitality. Have a safe trip back. I got one more session, then I fly to Stanford. Thank you.
All right, so a few housekeeping items. You don't have to look over here. So first, now everybody stop, turn on your Wi-Fi, hit the QR code.